On this episode of the Apple Watchers, Dad explains how the Apple Watch Noise app changed the life of his son with autism. The new 16-inch MacBook Pro is here. Goldman Sachs offers to reevaluate Apple Card credit limits after gender bias allegations. AirPods alone could be a $175 billion enterprise. Apple changing its testing after iOS 13 bugs. All this, our picks, and much more. This is episode number 14. Welcome to the Apple Watchers, a podcast covering all things Apple Watch and many things Apple. This episode and every episode is brought to you by me, Kevin Hare, and my co-host Jonathan Zarco, aka Jay-Z. All right, let's get started. All right, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Are you ready for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we're getting set. We have the turkey purchased. We need to get a leg of lamb. Leanna's also doing that, so that's the next thing on the shopping list.
Okay, sounds good. I'm getting ready to go out of town, go up north and see the family that lives up there. So
that'll be nice.
I may have to leave early though. The forecast says that the Grapevine, where I'll be traveling through, may be snowed in on Wednesday.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I actually may take a few days off and go up early, which would be
It got cold for us out of nowhere. It was like 85 on Monday, and then all of a sudden 65 on Wednesday.
Yeah. I love this weather though. Love it.
I do prefer the cold, but I just like it to be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah. I might be ready to move to another state at some point that's a little cooler and less fires. Yeah, anyone listening, please suggest some states and cities to live in. Thank you very much. I would appreciate that.
If anyone knows of a state that's just like California, but without the fires.
And not as hot.
And not as hot.
Yeah.
I think we're thinking about Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon
or
Washington. Yeah, something like that. Colorado's too cold. Looks beautiful, but it's actually a lot colder than those two states.
Well, and no ocean, so.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not that we're surfing that much, but still.
Yeah, I think my surfing days are over. I guess, when you get to this age, you just surf the internet.
Yeah.
That's about
Catch a wave.
That's about as active as it gets as far as getting the notion. No. Anyways, why don't we get started with a few Apple Watch stories? There's not too much going on, but, it kind of gets this way as we get closer to the holidays. So, anyways, they have a Thanksgiving activity challenge. So that's set for, I believe, Thanksgiving Day, right?
The 28th. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And you can earn this award by completing any walk, run, or wheelchair workout of at least 5K. That's equivalent to 3.1 miles in distance. If you complete the challenge, Apple will reward you with the typical badges. So yeah,
as well as stickers for messages and FaceTime again.
Yeah, always that. So and this is in America. So anyone listening outside of the United States, this is not happening. So because
I think it's a cute challenge. It's essentially a turkey trot, right? They're encouraging everybody to do a turkey trot. And if you're about to load up on 3,000 calories worth of turkey and pie, what's 3 miles?
Yeah, I could easily do this. The only thing is where I'm going, it's supposed to rain a lot. And I think here in Los Angeles, it's supposed to rain a lot on Thanksgiving. But
that's true.
Maybe it won't be terrible. I don't mind, some rain. I get out in the rain regardless. So
just turn the walking app on while you're pacing back and forth around the house, to the kitchen, back to the table, to the kitchen, back to the table. Sure enough, you'll get that badge.
Yeah, it may take hours and hours, maybe a very long workout, but I will get it. Yeah, it could take 5 hours. Yeah.
You can use it as a justification, like, well, I have to get up and go get another piece of pie because I'm trying to get to this 3.1 miles.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways.
Lots of fun.
Yeah. So if you want to participate, do it. Thanksgiving Day, do it.
So, in other news, there is a huge study that has confirmed the Apple Watch ECG can accurately detect AFib. Now, this is the thing that Apple is, safe and saying that it's not 100%, but this is them kind of moving towards a world where we might be able to do that. So there was a big test where they did a test with over 4,000 people. It was actually close to 420,000 people. And over 8 months, about a little over 2,000 were notified that they may have had an AFib. So that's about 0.5% of the participants. And then of those 2,000 people, this group was sent an ECG patch to get a second opinion. And those patches confirmed that 84% of those people had some kind of a symptom that is related to or seems like an atrial fibrillation. And then 34% actually did have it. So from this data, the doctors have concluded that the study determined that the probability of receiving an irregular pulse notification was low. Even so, they say the Apple Heart study is merely a foundation to follow up studies to get additional data. And so, in the meantime, they found that if you're wearing your Apple Watch and the ECG says that you have an AFib, go to the doctor because there is most certainly something wrong with your heart. I know that before there was concern that people would be getting all of these incorrect notifications that's frightening them and then crowding the doctor's offices, but it really does seem to be that that's not the case. But if it does give you a notification that there is something potentially wrong, that there is a good chance that it is actually something wrong. So really cool.
Yeah, and we've covered several stories of the watch detecting AFib in people and them going to the doctor and it being confirmed. And even prior to starting this podcast, I saw a lot of stories with the same results.
Yeah, it's just the number of people that have actually had their lives saved because they're like, man, I feel fine. My watch says something weird, so I'm going to go talk to the doctor. And sure enough, they're like, yeah, if you hadn't come in, you would have died like a week from now.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, very cool. So that was a long study and it's done.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be more coming up too. But outlook is looking good.
Yeah, very cool. Well, this next story comes from 9to5Mac. Dad explains, originally came from People magazine. Article we'll be quoting is from 9to5Mac. Dad explains how the Apple Watch noise app changed the life of his son with autism. So People tells the story of how the noise app for WatchOS 6 has helped a 21-year-old Texas kid with autism improve his social skills. Scott Bennett tells People that his youngest son, Sam, had always struggled keeping his speaking voice down, despite being a social butterfly. So Sam, 21, is on the autism spectrum, and though he's the epitome of a social butterfly, people just fall in love with him, Scott tells People. He's long struggled with an exceptionally loud speaking voice. He just never had the ability to modulate it, says Scott, who's 59. For years, we've been struggling with his voice since he started talking. The voice level is really, really, really loud. So according to Scott, Sam will initially respond to being asked to use his inside voice, quote. But that is only temporary, and his voice gradually gets louder again. For the Bennett family, this significantly hinders the ability to go places together. So he said, we just go places. He's also got a short attention span too. So you pull these things together and it's hard for the family, says Scott. You learn to adapt, but it's always tough, and especially for a guy like me who thrives on silence. I got blessed with the loudest human being on the planet.
That's life.
Yeah. So that's where the Apple Watch noise app came into play. After updating his Apple Watch to Watch OS 6, Scott noticed that the new Noise app, and he instantly thought it would, how it could help Sam with his communication skills. At this point, Scott says he tried everything else with no luck. So he says, my first thought was, I got to try this on Sam. Why didn't we think of this sooner? Because we tried everything, Scott says. Scott then showed Sam how to use the Noise app on the Apple Watch, right? Including how the decibel measure increases in real time based on the volume level. Sam was instantly able to use the Noise app to monitor the volume of his voice. So he said he immediately saw and started using his voice to make it work, and then immediately started talking really quietly. He says, I was like, you got to be kidding me. My wife, Christy, is not going to believe this. I don't believe what I'm seeing. Now, when Sam is speaking too loudly, Scott says he can say, simply flash Sam his Apple Watch to adjust his volume. Then using the Noise app to monitor Sam's volume level makes things a lot more tolerable for us and our family. So
that's really cool. I mean, true story. There are a lot of other people who aren't on the autism spectrum that talk way too loud, myself included.
Oh, really?
So, yes, I'm constantly I have to be reminded to bring it down. Or especially when I was a kid too. They'd be like, okay, yeah, stop yelling.
Does this happen at work?
We have an open floor plan, and
yeah.
Sometimes you have to be loud just because there's background noise. But yeah, it's. I think this is something that everyone could kind of use.
Okay, are you using this app to keep things?
I might now.
Someone's gonna just go like this to you, John.
Yeah.
They're just gonna flash you the Apple Watch, John.
Yeah.
Indoor voice.
Indoor voices. What's also cool about this, though, I think why it actually had an impact on Sam was that he was able to visually see how his voice is being read by a device, right? It's one thing to be out there and be loud and you're not thinking about how loud you're talking. And then people be like, okay, shh, bring it down. Versus actually seeing it and seeing a needle or, the bars jumping and then being able to bring it back down and register how it feels to talk that way and see how it's affecting the levels. And I think that's probably part of the reason why they're having better success with this, right? They're able to he's able to contextualize the volume a little bit better.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think it's, I think almost the kid himself is responding to the tech,
Mm-hmm.
and not, probably having mom and dad constantly tell him quiet. It's not, probably gets old after a while, and probably doesn't respond to it as much. And, having something tech related maybe just kind of made an impact on him.
Free app idea or opportunity for some developer out there, a watch app that is monitoring the noise around you and gives you a notification if you start elevating your voice too much. The watch is listening. If you yell out the phrase for Siri, she can hear you. So I'm pretty sure there's probably a way to make it understand and be able to read a person's voice, an individual's voice, and then also be able to register how loud they may be talking and give them a notification. Because this, like I said, it's not just for people on the spectrum, but also just other people who don't have a clue sometimes about how loud they're talking or what's going on. Slap in the App Store, making $5 a pop. It says here there's 5 million people that are on the spectrum, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are also struggling with kind of the same thing. Totally an opportunity there.
Yeah, this points out that there's 5 million folks with special needs, not just on autism spectrum. So there might be other features that might help, and maybe Apple will develop other features after seeing stories like this too that may help people with special needs. I mean, related to me is even people in wheelchairs, that Apple has catered to people in wheelchairs I mean, we just mentioned the activity challenge, and it specifically says,
a wheelchair app.
Yeah.
Exercise is also counted.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool stuff. And it's neat.
Inclusivity isn't just the right thing to do. It's also good business. I mean, at the end of the day, it improves your market base and your user base, and it helps everything. It's really great.
Yeah. So why don't we move on to some Apple stories? So I think this came out on November 13th. As rumored, the 16-inch MacBook Pro.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
I thought for sure this was not coming.
Yeah.
I thought we'd get the AirPods Pro. So color me wrong, but it's a happy thing to be wrong about. Yes, they have completely ditched the 15-inch MacBook Pro in favor of the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, its actual form factor is still the same size.
Yeah.
It's just the screen and the bevel around it that is a little bit larger.
Or thinner.
Or the bevel's smaller, the screen is bigger.
Yeah, the bevel. Yeah. It's pretty spectacular. I noticed too, we can go over some of the specs, that they're giving you more for the same price as last year's 15-inch MacBook Pro, because the starting price is $2,399, $2,399 American dollars, going all the way up to $6,000 if you max it out.
There's some high-end configurations you can add to this bad boy. Yes.
Oh yeah, 8 terabytes, 8 terabytes of storage, of SSD storage. But I just have to say, a lot of their devices, they keep giving us more, but at the same price. Or even the iPhone 11 is actually $50 less than last year.
Yep.
And you actually get a lot more than that 10R. So they seem to be going in a good direction, but we can check out some of these specs.
So it's funny you mentioned that they're giving you more. In this case, they're physically giving you more because it's a little bigger. It's a little heavier.
A little thicker, too.
A little thick, that's what I mean. Yeah.
We'll discuss that in a bit, too, on their design changes overall. But
if we want to go through some of the specs between last year and this year's model, so they went from a 15.4-inch display to a 16.
Oh, yeah.
Their pixel density went from 220 pixels per inch to 226, which isn't a huge change. You probably won't notice it, but it does mean that you are getting a little bit of a higher resolution. The actual resolution of the screen went from 2880 by 1800 to 3072 by 1920. And I think that really is the reason why it's bigger, is just because there is more screen now,
Yeah.
It's not really it's being affected a little bit by that pixel density. The pixels are ever so slightly smaller, but not that drastic. Brightness is the same, 500 nits. There wasn't any issue with that before, so it's good that they're staying there. The display is still a wide color True Tone display. The processors are still configurations between 2.6 gigahertz 6-core i7, 2.3 gigahertz 8-core i9, and the 2.4 gigahertz 8-core i9 is also still available. But now they're also offering they're all the same.
The storage, though.
The storage, and the RAM.
So they're giving you more this year. Basically, like the storage last year started at 256 gigabytes for the same price. This year it's 512. And
they've essentially doubled everything. So it started at 256 before, now it's starting at 512. The storage last year capped at 4 terabytes. It now caps at 8 terabytes.
Yeah.
Massive. Massive. The doubling doesn't stop there. So memory configurations, the baseline memory is still 16 gigs of RAM. But the 15-inch maxed out at 32 gigs. This bad boy maxes out at 64 gigs. So this is a workhorse. This is a pro machine that you can configure up to. Graphics cards are pretty much the same as last year, but there is some options where you can get more memory in your graphics card. So there's an option for an 8 gig Radeon Pro, whereas last year they only had the Radeon Pro at 4 gig.
Yeah.
Still has a Touch ID, and that's integrated into the keyboard. The trackpad still has Force Touch, and the keyboards still have backlit with ambient light sensors. But there's some cool tech that's happening with that. There is an evolution on it. So
yeah, but the a few things about the keyboard too is it has now the inverted arrow keys, which people were complaining about. And it has an escape key because people are very furious about that.
Yeah, it is. So. It's very polarizing when you try to take away things that people are using on a daily basis. Yeah. I'm glad they put those back in there.
Yeah, they were going in a weird direction, but like I said, we'll talk about that when we get to the article about their design and changes going on with that.
Mm-hmm. So, like we said before, the dimensions are basically the same, but it is a little thicker. Its weight went from 4.02 pounds to 4.3 pounds. But with that, you're going to get, we'll talk about it, a better keyboard, as well as better battery life. So it goes from 10 hours to 11 hours.
And that battery, I think it's almost 100 watts, and that's actually the max that you can bring on a plane, on flights. So perfect. Yep. This tells me that if Apple was allowed to put more, they would just crank it up. They would have made this MacBook Pro a little thicker than it even is now, and probably put a big giant battery in there. But they're restricted in that department, so they put the most they could.
Mm-hmm. It does benefit them though to get as large of a battery as possible, especially if they're upping the RAM and the processing power of things, because doing that higher intensity data crunching does generate or suck down more power. So you do need that. FaceTime camera is the same, 720 FaceTime HD camera, which we were chatting earlier. That seems low, actually, 720p, but maybe people just for Skype don't really need it. Speakers. They did do some new tweaking to the speakers. So before they had just stereo speakers with high dynamic range. The new one has a 6-speaker force canceling woofer, Dolby Atmos with 3-directional beamforming, which is a fancy way of saying that it has a lot more audio output, and that it sounds a lot clearer and better. It doesn't sound like you're listening to a laptop, anymore, so.
It's supposed to have better bass response. Also, I almost overlooked this, but it's supposed to have a really good microphone. They claim that you can do podcasting on it.
Oh, directly? Oh.
Yeah. Curious about that. That would be interesting. But it's, I don't know that people would use it a lot, but it's nice to throw it in there. I just like to see the quality of everything just go up. I mean, why not just do it? Yeah, and I think people were a little bummed about the 720p front-facing camera and no Wi-Fi 6, which would have future-proofed it a little bit.
I don't think that's a hard thing for them to add in. So probably it'll just be one of those soft updates that they do later on, where all of a sudden they're like, now the MacBook Pro has Wi-Fi 6. Again, we had talked about it before. It's not really a thing right now that everyone needs, but if you're thinking about spending $5 or $6 grand on a laptop, you're hoping that it's going to be good for the next 5 or 6 years or so, and probably in the next 2 to 3, we're going to really start seeing this Wi-Fi 6 become more prevalent. So, word of the wise. I mean, if you're not trying to do a bunch of wireless data transfer, it might not be as big of an issue. And Wi-Fi 5 is good. It's not saying it's bad, but just not going to be as good as 6.
Yeah. And I myself and others have been a little bummed that they didn't introduce a smaller version. And there's been rumors of a 13-inch or 14-inch MacBook Pro coming in the first quarter of 2020. I hope this is true, and I hope it's 14-inch. Because this, there's people that are not complete pros. They, maybe call them prosumers, where they're kind of in between. And that's probably where I fall into. I can't justify, $23.99 plus tax, plus every, Apple Care and all that. to do what I'm doing. But if they can do a 14-inch and have some lower price points, I think they would just kill it. And I would definitely be interested and ready to hit that buy button right away. I would love to see a 14-inch, because my old 15-inch here, the screen's probably pretty small. I don't remember what the measurement is diagonally, but going from this screen to a 13-inch is pretty tough, to downsize.
Yeah.
But going to a
14 I don't think you would see.
A 14-inch, I would love. It would be fantastic. And
especially too, because the resolution is going to be higher. It's just going to feel, it would be a smaller size, but it'll actually probably feel bigger to you.
Yeah. So I'm hoping these rumors are true. We'll see,
I think it's the case, and I think it's a good chance that it's going to be a 14. Admitting that I've been wrong about a couple of things, so take all of my assumptions with a grain of salt. But from a value perspective, it doesn't cost them a lot to put in a 14-inch or to up it to 14-inch, but it makes the value of what you're buying so much greater. So
yeah, I think they would just kill it, because I think their 13-inch starts at like $1,100 or $1,400, something like that, which is reasonable. And just having the name MacBook Pro and having 14-inch come in at that starting price, man, people would go nuts.
It would be great for students too, because a 13 is a little hard to learn on, right? Like if you're trying to get into graphics and design and stuff like that, you need a MacBook Pro to start. And yeah, you can get the 13, but you just need more room for your palettes and stuff. But the 14, I think, actually is in that area, that range that you could comfortably do it. So it'd be a great entry point for students, especially.
Yeah, that price though, the 16-inch is just.
Yeah, it's a little high. It's so.
I mean, it's
an entry barrier for consumers. Definitely.
Yeah, it's very reasonable compared to last year's 15-inch, and you get a lot more bang for your buck. But just that being that starting price, I'm not the only one. Been a lot of people upset that they didn't introduce a whole line of MacBook Pros, instead of just the 16-inch. But oh well, only time will tell.
I think I wonder if there's some cannibalization that they were trying to avoid, and that's why they offer the 16-inch first. Also, understanding that there's probably going to be a larger, like for the actual pros, the ones that really are going to be fervently wanting to buy, they're probably going to want the 16-inch anyway. So from a priority standpoint, it's smarter to put that out there to start the runway for it with that size. But I think if they had put them both out there at the same time, you are going to have a lot of consumers who go, well, the price points are pretty, significantly different, and it's only 2 inches smaller. And, if I have a 13 now, getting a 14 is good. Whereas opposed to if they put this out, if you have a 13 now and you're looking to buy, you're like, yeah, 16. All right, great. So there's some market that they're trying to hit. It is a barrier that I don't think, for some consumers, they're not going to buy, but come January or earlier in the year, they are able to put it out there. That's where they'll be able to pick that up. So I think it's a way to help kind of guide people who might flip-flop on the size, commit to the 16, and then they'll release the smaller size later. Did they do that with the iPad Pro too? Or did they release both sizes at the same time?
Man, I don't remember. They may have, because I feel like they try to get you to spend more money first, because a lot of people will, exactly. Oh, I got to get it. It's new. It's shiny. I want it.
Yeah, exactly. And so they put the bigger one out first. Yeah. And then they put out the smaller one at the lower price point.
But Mr. Phil Schiller, I know you're listening, right? Please, 14-inch MacBook Pro, please.
With the updated keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah, with just like the 16-inch, but in a 14-inch version. Anyways, let's move on to this story. Now we didn't cover, we didn't cover the original story. People were claiming that when you apply for the Apple Card with Goldman Sachs that it was making decisions based on your gender. And we never covered that. So now we're covering kind of the aftermath. So this story comes to us from 9to5Mac. Goldman Sachs offers to reevaluate Apple Card credit limits after gender bias allegations. So Goldman Sachs has issued another statement on the ongoing allegations of gender bias in Apple Card credit limits. In a new statement this evening, that was a few days ago, Carrie Helio, retail bank CEO of Goldman Sachs, said that the bank will reevaluate credit limits following the allegations. In the statement, Helio emphasized that Goldman Sachs is not aware of your gender or marital status during the Apple Card application process. The CEO also noted that Goldman Sachs worked with a third party to review its credit decisioning process and guard against unintended biases and outcomes. Haley explained that the difference in credit limits stems from a limited personal credit history, according to Goldman Sachs. If an applicant's existing cards are supplemental cards under the spouse's primary account, this could affect the credit history details. Ultimately, Goldman Sachs says that if the person feels if their credit line does not adequately reflect their credit history, they can have their credit line reevaluated. To do this, go to the Wallet app on your iPhone and chat with a customer support representative. So since hearing of this story, I've heard of it's actually another podcaster, but his wife actually got a higher credit limit than he did on his card. So I don't know what's really at play here. I know what this Carrie Halio is saying, but
I think it's just that the way credit is given to people is based on a lot of different factors. And if you have a spouse that is typically the primary account holder, like they're the ones who fill out the forms and just get the card in their name and then add on their spouse as a secondary, it's going to affect the credit history and the limit. It may be too that, people may have been married and they had their own credit card and then got married and added the spouse onto that card. And so the credit history on that card is, much longer for the primary than it is for the spouse that was added on. That could affect it. Also, like in the case of the podcaster, I wouldn't be surprised if that guy has other things, other credits or other lines of credit in just his name, right? Maybe he bought some property or he has a car loan that's only in his name, things like that. That's going to change your credit worthiness. And so if he has things that are in just his name, but things they aren't on his wife's name, then she may qualify for a higher limit because of that. So lots of different weird factors in there. Very cool though that they have an option where you can call and get your line reevaluated. So you might be able to clear some things up with people.
Yeah, you could actually text them as well, either or. And they usually respond pretty quick. And I've heard just from other articles too that Apple tries to separate themselves from these stories and say, well, that's Goldman Sachs. Yep. Which is not a good idea to do. I'm sorry, but that it says Apple Card. They have to take responsibility for this as well. If there's actually something going on here. So,
yeah, it's interesting. We'll see how this starts to develop. I'm glad to see that they at least are saying that they're going to look into it to make sure, just to help clarify that process a little bit more. But
so this next story is all about you. Because I'm still jealous that you have the AirPods Pro. But
I'm listening like a pro, man, with my AirPods. On its own, AirPods could be a $175 billion with a B enterprise. This is per Apple Insider.
Man.
So if a private company was performing the way Apple's AirPods are in terms of rapid sales growth in units and revenues with strong margins, it could be valued at $175 billion next year, making it the 32nd largest company in the United States.
Jeez.
So a guy named Midas Quant tweeted out his estimate, figuring that a year after launching in 2016, Apple sold 16 million AirPods, followed by 35 million last year. Quant believes that there are estimated 50 million to 60 million AirPods that'll be sold in 2019. And in 2020, Quant predicts Apple will sell 100 million units at an average selling price of about $200. That's 20 billion in revenue with a 35% net profit. That's 7 billion in annual profits with a fairly conservative 25 PE multiply. Quant says that would be a $175 billion valuation. So it just goes to show that, individually, the different products that Apple's putting out are just powerhouses. And honestly, have not been able to say enough great things about these AirPods. Completely blew away all of my expectations. And so I see these numbers as being possible. Amazon, for some reason, also has been putting them out there on discount. And, you might see some discounts on the Pros during holidays or Black Friday. But also just the regular AirPods are going on sale at steep discounts right now too, and also a good product. If they fit in your ears well.
Yeah, so. I think they're gonna kill it during Christmas. I mean, it's gonna be nuts as far as sales goes with these. And I'll point out, because I have the AirPods 1, I keep wanting to get the new AirPods Pros, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Even though, they work great still, there's just some features that I would like to have out of the AirPods Pros, Yeah.
It's and the price point too for them, I feel like it's not crazy, right? It's a nice gift. It may be a marquee gift for some people. But it's not $1,000 phone, right? Or a $1,500 or $2,000 computer or $2,000 iPad. And so if there's somebody that you have in your life and you want to get them a nice present, I think there's a lot of people that kind of fit in that range for people, and it's a great gift.
Yeah, I agree. So someone please buy me some. Makes a great gift.
Santa's listening.
Yeah. So we've talked about a little bit of this before, but it keeps coming up. Apple's finally willing to make gadgets thicker so they work better. And this comes to us from CNBC. We're not going to read the whole article because I think you and I can pretty much cover everything. But I will point out the key points. Apple's finally putting function over form. Some of its newest gadgets are thicker than previous models, but you get better keyboards and longer battery life. Yeah, under Johnny Ive, Apple seemed obsessed with creating really thin devices, but at least you consider the previous butterfly keyboards at the cost of function, right? A lot of people were seeing that transition of just, the look of it over the function of it, and it was just getting
form
out of
over
hand.
function.
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, about the MacBook Pro, but Apple's new MacBook Pro has a better keyboard and longer battery life, but it's 2% bigger and thicker than the 15-inch model it replaces. So I have a lot to say about this. I like this direction. It seems, weird that right when Johnny Ive leaves, all this changes, but maybe that's why it's changed. And I love Johnny Ive's designs. You think back the history of Apple and when he started in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And then when Steve Jobs came back, them together, I mean, the products they created were incredible.
Yeah. The iMac, the original iMac?
Yeah, the iMac, the awesome. iPod, the iPhone. But it gets to a point where maybe that sort of time is gone. I mean, look at Bendgate, right? I think Johnny Ive may have gone a little overboard with making the iPhone thin. And Apple just seems to have more freedom now, and be steering in a new direction, right? A good example is even the iPhone 11 Pro, right? When we first saw images of that, we saw those 3 lenses in rumors. Like, oh my God, that is so ugly, right? That's the initial feeling. Like that's really ridiculous. Again, ugly. But Apple owns it. They completely own it. That became their posters. When you walk into a mobile carrier, usually the first thing you'll see right now is that poster of just a big blown up image of those 3 lenses. And it's so different than what they used to do. But I love the direction they're going in. I think there's a place for thin devices, but the Pro models should not be thin. There's no reason for them to be thin. There was no reason to change that keyboard on the MacBook Pros. There was just not really a reason for it.
I think it happened. It became kind of like an arms race, right? So Apple was always known for creating good products that looked really cool, and they loved to be able to say that they had the thinnest or the smallest of the device, because it was like a badge of honor, right? There was a great moment when Steve Jobs walks out with a little folder and he pulls a laptop out of it. That was mind blowing to people, right? And I think in that pursuit of trying to maintain their dominance, they started to sacrifice some of the function pieces, and they deemed the things that they sacrificed. I don't think they did it. It wasn't malicious and it wasn't negligent necessarily, but I don't think they understood how people really use their stuff, abuse their stuff more than use their stuff. And so, reducing down the keyboard, they're like, well, people are tapping on their phones, so that doesn't even move down. Why does a laptop need? Like, I can see the conversations they had and the justifications they can make in their mind, but there is something to be said about I'm used to keys moving down, and they don't. And I want them to, or they're making too much noise, or my battery life is getting really low. Even if the physical battery is bigger than the previous generations before, the processor intensivity and the just the different things that it's doing, are draining your battery even more. And so they're really now, I think, focusing on the user experience, which is great. They're going back to where they were before. They used to really focus on user experience, making sure that using the product was a seamless, easy, great experience. And they're allowing that to dictate some of the form. Now, I still think the phones look great. Even with the 3 cameras on, I'm like, oh, it's funny. And the bulge is still not my favorite. I would like it to be flat, but it's not a deal breaker, right? It doesn't really, for most guests or for most users, it's not a huge issue, especially when you have a case on it. I full well admit that I am in the, 0.5% that just runs around with a naked phone. And so, to me, it's a little bit of an issue. But also, I'm not using my phone when it's sitting down on a desk or on a table that much. So when I actually am using it, that little bump doesn't really affect me, But the benefit I get from it, the awesome cameras, does affect me. And so that's where I'm happy to see them move towards that direction. I think they learned, and I think Samsung is still learning. That the form shouldn't sacrifice the function. So like their new foldable phone and the whole issue with the Galaxy Fold, right? Yeah. And the fact that like the screen looked like it had a screen cover that you're supposed to take off that actually damaged the phone, or if you got some dust or something inside of the edges, it completely messed it up. Like those are big issues. But now you look at Motorola, and they just launched the new Razr, right? Yeah. And I've been hearing great reviews on how that thing opens up. Yeah. But it also shows I don't need a giant phone. But maybe a folding phone is kind of a cool thing if it means that I have a smaller form factor when I'm not using it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad that companies are starting to learn from that. And I think Apple was one of the ones on the forefront to go back to the user experience.
Yeah. I'm definitely glad they're going in this direction. I've said it so many times. I don't mind, even if the next iPhone was a little thicker than this one, I don't think I would notice.
Yeah, we're talking microns.
Yeah, it's usually less than a millimeter. It'll be like 0.7 millimeters. And I wouldn't have an issue with it. I just love the extra features that I've got with these phones. Even the speakers, I want to point out that they obviously, because of the MacBook Pro, or not because, but on that device, the iPad Pro and these iPhone 11 Pros, and probably the 11 as well. I haven't heard those, but the speakers are all way better than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever listened to anything on your phone. Like I've sat in bed and like watched a video. I'm like, wow, this sounds pretty good. I mean, for coming out of those speakers, like it almost kind of surrounds you. Mm-hmm. And I always, maybe that's because they bought Beats, and I always wondered like, what are they going to do with that? And they hadn't done much. And they're probably using some of the Beats technology and speaker technology and applying it to these devices. And it's great. I mean, and even if they only wanted to do this, add better speakers and make the devices thicker only on the Pro models, that would be fine. Keep the iPhone 11 a little thinner. That would be fine.
Yeah.
I would assume it is probably thinner. I've actually never looked, but I just think it's great, and I think they should keep going in this direction, because it was getting very user hostile, where it just the whole Bengate thing, it was almost embarrassing. Obviously there was a way to test that, and they didn't fully test.
Well, they didn't even think about it in that form factor, right? Because you also think about it too. It's especially at the time, it was a bunch of engineers that created it, right? And going to predominantly be men, and a lot of men don't put a phone in their back pocket,
right?
Or wear skin tight jeans. And so they weren't thinking about this constant pressure, folding pressure that's going to be these devices, or that's going to be used on these devices. And so having it in a back pocket or having it in a front pocket against a flexing body, you don't necessarily think about those things until you put it out in the wild and real people use it. So, and going back to the speakers, one of the things I do listen to or use my speakers on my phone for is I watch a lot of movie trailers on my phone. Like I'll be scrolling through Facebook or something like that, and new Jurassic Park movie or new Star Wars movie or something. I will watch them on my phone, and I'm not missing anything. I'm still getting a very good cinematic experience, and it's really, really cool because of these new speakers. You get the almost like a surround sound kind of quality to it. You get a left and right because they have the top and the bottom speakers now, and overall just really great.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I notice for you or anyone using the iPhone 11 Pro or Pro Max, that if you put it in horizontal mode, the speakers actually sound different than vertical.
Because it has a speaker set at the top and the bottom, and so then it's using them in a different way.
Yeah, so you're getting more of a right and left and having it surround you a little bit more, but it's pretty darn decent. And I just love having just those extra little perks, even if it comes with a thicker device,
So diving back to what we were talking about before, and we were kind of holding off because we wanted to talk about it here. So in the new 16-inch, it is a thicker body, slightly 2% thicker.
Yeah.
Don't really think anyone's going to notice. But that 2% means a lot when it comes to key travel. And these new keyboards on these 16 inches are supposed to be much better. They still have...
Are you using a jackhammer right now?
Yeah, sorry, there's construction next door.
I don't know if you can...
Yeah.
Man, you should do one thing at a time.
I'm sorry. I got to multitask. I'm sorry, guys. The actual key shape themselves is a little bit more shallow, but the shape is the dimensions shape is the same size. So I actually saw some other, I think it was iFixit, was able to pop off a key from another, like a old wireless Mac keyboard and actually pop it in there. And it raised a little bit higher because it's set for a different keyboard, but it still fits. It's the same mechanics that those old keyboards were using on this new keyboard. It's the same. It's the new. It's back to the original butterfly piece. It's just been micro and like sliced down to the point where it is at its absolute minimum. And it's supposed to have a much better key travel, a much better feel when you're typing on it. And they've done some interesting things too with the backlighting. So all the Pro Series keyboards have that backlighting where the letters kind of illuminate on the keys. Well, in the older versions, it was a single LED diode that was being illuminated, and then the light was traveling through the key itself and lighting up the letter on the key. Well, now it's an array, and with that array, they're able to put a blending on the sides and a little bit of like a gasket so that there isn't any light bleeding out the sides. It was actually kind of a cool effect, like your keys just kind of glowed. But in seeing other pictures of these new keyboards and only the letter is glowing, it's actually it's a really, really nice effect. So there's other little details and enhancements that they've made to this new keyboard that I think people are going to really love.
Very cool. Before I move on to this next story, I've also heard that Apple's going to be making a jackhammer, so you'll love that.
Yes!
It's wireless. Yeah. It's going to be really, really cool, and they're not going to make it too thin or bendable or anything like that. So
it'll be a really good jackhammering experience, is what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah. And it's supposed to be quieter. So you might,
that would be helpful for my neighbors who are podcasting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that way you can multitask and jackhammer at the same time. So actually, it quiets the surface that you're actually jackhammering. So if that's the right term, jackhammering. Anyways, so Apple released their research app. This is the one that they announced. Was it at WWDC? I don't even remember.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So they rolled out the app on Thursday, November 14th, called Research, which allows iPhone users to participate in years-long health studies that track data from their phones. The app is currently promoting the open studies on women's health, heart, and movement and hearing. Heart and movement is one of them. So there's three total: women's health, heart and movement, and hearing. Mm-hmm. Apple's first health study, published this week, collected data from users that concluded the Apple Watch can help detect heart problems. We covered that a little while ago on this episode. So any iPhone user can enroll. The process for signing up is outlined in this article that I'll include. So
now you signed up for one, right?
I did. I signed up for the heart and movement. Now, I would encourage people to sign up. It can only help with health and these types of studies. It is a lot of kind of terms and conditions that come up, but I think they're trying to cover all their bases. I mean, I started taking screenshots of each page, and then all of a sudden I'm like, man, this is going to be like 20 screenshots.
Do you have to hit agree at the end of every page too?
No,
like they're each one individual,
no.
Or you just have to scroll through the entire page before you get to the next page?
Yeah, but there was several, like I must have hit agree 4 to 5 times, something like that, just in signing up initially for that heart and movement study.
Wow.
So then they give you just kind of little activities. I haven't really delved into it. I can report more on it later. But they'll ask you questions, periodically. But this, it's going on for years. It doesn't actually, I don't think it specifies how many years it's going on. But you can also, if you're just you don't want to do it anymore, you can opt out at any time. So
And it's not, so it's not giving you any new data. Like it doesn't open up any new feature or anything for the phone.
No.
But it just allows your data to be seen by Apple so they can aggregate it together with other people's information.
Yeah. So it's basically if you want to help, with these type of studies, it's up to you. If you feel like it would possibly violate your privacy, then you probably don't want to do it. But it will point out in each study and going through various stages of signing up what type of data you're giving them.
That's good.
You also have options to give them this data, but not that data. So things like that. So it's really
custom tailor it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I just felt like I wanted to do it. I didn't get to do the other heart study that we mentioned because I didn't have a watch that was new enough. That's when I was still running this Series 0. Yeah, so I wasn't able to participate when that started and then ended. So I thought I would sign up for this one. So I would encourage people, if you can share that data, it would probably help benefit a lot of people. So
yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. Apple announces special app-focused event for December 2nd. This is coming to us from 9 to 5 Mac. The invites went out on Monday, November 18th for a surprise event that'll be held in just 2 weeks in New York City. Actually, less than that now. We're looking at like a week and a half. I guess it's 2 weeks-ish. Currently, it appears that the event will be just to highlight Apple's top app and game picks from 2019. In the invite, Apple leads with the tagline, "Loved by millions, created by the best." So while Apple normally live streams its events and even included YouTube for its iPhone 11 event for the first time, it's unknown if this app event will be broadcast live. Apple's special events landing page doesn't include any information on the December event at the time of writing. So the timing of the event lines up with Apple usually announcing its App of the Year, Game of the Year, and other top charts, like the most downloaded apps and more. The interesting part about this is it's just the first time that Apple will hold the live event dedicated just to apps and games. And it opted to skip an October event this year and debuted AirPods Pro and the 16-inch MacBook Pro with press releases. So it seems very unlikely that Apple could sneak in a one more thing at the event as a holiday surprise and show off or announce like an AirTag or something else. Maybe plug some details on the Mac Pro launch that's slated for later. But yeah, we'll have to see. I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if they like, oh yeah, by the way, we're making a thing, AirTags.
Yeah. I've also heard since dropping the story in this doc that this could have been an accidental leak, that it was meant for developers, like they got invites and they were it wasn't supposed to be a big public hoo-ha.
Oh, it's just literally just supposed to be like an award show, like the Emmys of apps or something.
Yes. So it is possible that it just may be pretty much nothing, just
they're just trying to turn their top app picks or whatever into a special event for them.
Yeah, because previously it was just in the App Store, right? They would every year they have their best apps, in different categories and whatnot. So it may be just nothing. I guess we'll see on December 2nd. Right?
Yeah, we'll find out.
Moving on. So this comes from Ars Technica. No, Apple isn't opening a new manufacturing plant in Texas. So
what?
Well, someone named Donald Trump was trying to take credit for opening the Apple plant. So Donald Trump toured Apple's Mac Pro manufacturing facility in Austin, Texas with CEO Tim Cook on Wednesday, November 20th. Trump said in a tweet after the tour, "Today I opened a major Apple manufacturing plant in Texas that will bring high-paying jobs back to America," he wrote. And it is his actual tweet. I checked. It's not fake news. Thank you very much.
He opened a plant that's been open for many years.
Yes. So Trump neglected to mention a couple of key facts about the facility. First, it's technically owned by Apple contractor, a company named Flex, not Apple itself. More important, It's not new. Apple has been building the Mac Pro at the same location since 2013. Yeah, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Now I only feel for Tim Cook because, yeah, he doesn't when he's around Donald Trump, he doesn't ever look like he's really having a good time, shall we say?
I don't think there's a lot of people that are around him that look like they're having a good time.
Yeah.
Even his kids seem to be concerned.
Anyone that's around him that looks like they're having a good time seems to have aged quite a bit since the beginning, too.
That is true.
But,
yeah.
man, I really feel for Tim Cook because he's had to walk a fine line. This article doesn't really talk about it, but he is walking such a fine line with Donald Trump himself and all the tariffs. You know, and specifically on this Mac Pro, because some of the components are coming from China and other places as well, but China seems to be the main, issue.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they had more talks between the two of them. But leave it to Donald Trump to leave out just a few details that are actually facts.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's.
There's no
I am shocked and surprised that he is misinformed and miscommunicating things.
Yeah, so do not write to us and say no, but this, but that, because these are actually facts.
Yeah,
that they've been building since at this location since 2013, and it is a contractor called Flex. It is not an Apple plant, actually.
It probably just started making Mac Pros.
Yes.
And then he thought it meant it just started making things. And so he's opening. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe he's
cool, buddy.
Yeah, maybe Donald Trump is still calling him Tim Apple as well.
Yeah.
Who knows? Anyway.
Well, moving on. So, talking about the future. iOS 14. Features, changes, testing after iOS 13 bugs. So Apple is overhauling how it tests software after a swarm of bugs marred the last iPhone and iPad operating systems, according to people familiar with the shift. So software chief Craig Federighi, that's it, yeah. And lieutenants, including Stacy Lysick, announced the changes at a recent internal kickoff meeting with the company's software developers. The new approach calls for Apple developer teams to ensure the test versions known as the daily builds of future software updates disable unfinished or buggy features by default. So testers will then have the option to selectively enable those features via a new internal process and settings menu dubbed flags, allowing them to isolate the impact of each individual addition on the system. When the company's iOS 13 was released alongside the iPhone 11 in September, iPhone owners and app developers were confronted with a litany of software glitches, app crashes or launch slowly. Cellular signal was inconsistent. There were user interface errors in apps like messages, system-wide search issues, and problems loading emails. Some new features, such as sharing file folders over iCloud and streaming music to multiple sets of AirPods, were either delayed or are still missing. This amounted to one of the most troubled and unpolished operating system updates in Apple's history. Now I'm going to stop here and just add a little commentary. It didn't seem that bad to me. But I didn't get on at the very beginning. So I think if you were in the early beta, it was pretty rough.
Yeah, and that was only for about a week or two, I think. But, since it's actually been released to the public, there's been so many updates that I think, for us, we kind of don't mind, like, oh, a new update, cool. But a lot of people don't like doing updates. And it used to be that we would just get security updates mostly, and now it's relentless. It's like every week almost.
Yeah, it does feel.
And being
feels like a lot.
iOS 13 was actually staggered too because iPadOS didn't come out at the same time. It seems they do need to fix a few things, and then just try to keep it to security updates, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But it sounds, as we read further, it sounds like they have a lot of, new systems in place that should squash these kind of bugs, hopefully.
Well, the article continues that Apple will start a new development process. The new process will help early internal iOS versions be more usable or livable in Apple parlance. So prior to iOS 14's development, some teams would add features every day that weren't fully tested, while other teams would contribute changes weekly. Daily builds were like a recipe with lots of cooks adding ingredients, one person with knowledge to the process said. The new strategy is already being applied to the development of iOS 14, codenamed Azul. Internally, ahead of its debut next year, Apple's also considered delaying some iOS 14 features until 2021 in an update called Azul Plus One. Internally, that will likely be known as iOS 15 externally, to give the company more time to focus on performance. Still, iOS 14 is expected to rival iOS 13 in breadth of its new capabilities, with people familiar to Apple's plans. The testing shift will apply to all of Apple's operating systems, including iPadOS, watchOS, macOS, and tvOS. The latest Mac computer operating system, macOS Catalina, has manifested bugs such as incompatibility with many apps and missing messages and mail. Some HomePod speakers, which run an iOS-based operating system, stopped working after a recent iOS 13 update, leading Apple to temporarily pull the upgrade. The latest Apple Watch and Apple TV updates, on the other hand, have gone more smoothly. Apple executives hope that the overhauled testing approach will improve the quality of the company's software over the long term. But this isn't the first time that Apple engineers have heard this from management. So, yeah, I understand they're a big company and they have a lot of different teams all working on different parts. This is, something that we have to deal with at my job too. We have different teams working on different things, and it all has to go into the same app build. And yeah, you have to really be careful about what's going in there and how it's going to be released. So, and we're just doing an app that does, a couple of things versus an entire operating system that has other things getting plugged into it. So I imagine it's a very difficult process. I'm glad to see that they're trying to figure out a way to fix it,
Yeah,
to improve their process.
Sounds like they might be able to separate these bugs a little better, with that flags thing and,
or at least pinpoint what's causing it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, we added 8 things and now we have all these bugs that are happening across the board. And then you have to go into each one individually and try to figure out what happened. You could just turn them all off and then just turn them on one by one and see what's the thing that's making the issue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was iOS 11 that was really a mess. And then Craig Federighi, claimed that they were going to cut down on all the features and just make it smooth and not have bugs. And now to see, there still has been a lot of bugs. It's a little disappointing, hopefully this will help quite a bit.
I'm curious too about this whole Azul and Azul Plus One, where they're saying that they may delay some features. I wonder if they actually would delay it a full year, or if they would just maybe start staggering. And so they release an iOS 14 and then just have different features that are announced but don't come out until later on. And by the time iOS 15 comes out, all of the other features have now been, updated.
Yeah.
It's kind of like on the iPhone 11 Pro, the whole the extra camera feature that they added after the fact, So I could see them doing things similar to that, where we have a couple other features not quite ready yet, but we're going to roll them out once they are. And
yeah, I'm always, after that iOS 11 experience, I'm always down with them waiting on features. I'm very happy with the way the phone works and most of the features that are already in the phone. And in my head, I can't imagine what they would even add anymore,
Yeah.
And also, just on a side note is, I've a friend of mine had an iPhone and he's like, oh, I'm not under the Apple spell anymore, and I got an Android phone. And to me, because I've owned an Android briefly, but I got really in depth with it. They're both operating systems are really meshing to be pretty similar in a lot of ways. Like as far as features go, we don't have all the control on iOS that an Android user has, but they're getting closer. Yeah. I definitely I mean, you look back to, I don't know when you got your first iPhone. Mine was the 3GS, and this iPhone 11 Pro and that 3GS are like miles apart, especially in
wildly
features.
Different animals.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I'm pretty happy with just the amount of features we have, and I would like to see them not just go crazy ever again like they did with iOS 11.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just tame it down, make sure they work good. Keep my battery life. Don't mess with that. I have noticed a little bit of difference with the latest update too, but only slight. But I think I'm getting 30 to 40% at the end of the day instead of 50.
I was going to say, I feel like I've been having a little bit more drain on my battery too. And I didn't know if it was just me using it more or if there was something with the update.
And it's funny too, because if you were to take it into an Apple store, they'll be like, well, it lasted a whole day. You have 30%. It's like, but I just want to see that 50%. I just want to know that it's there, that there's that extra cushion,
Mm-hmm.
And even my watch too, I think is getting a little bit less. Because I wear it, I charge it in the morning and then wear it all day and sleep with it. And when I put it on the charger in the morning, it's kind of got that red charging symbol. Like the battery's so low that it's on like 14% or 15%. And that's changed since the last update as well. Anyways, moving on, I dropped a couple videos in the For Your Entertainment section. This is an interview with Phil Schiller by a guy named Jonathan Morrison. That's a YouTube video. I believe, on a side note too, that the sound was recorded actually with the 16-inch MacBook Pro.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
using
but it's
a mic.
Yeah, using that podcasting mic. But it's a pretty cool interview. I think it was about 10 or 15 minutes long. And it's rare that people probably get to interview Phil Schiller. And this guy does ask him about the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and he kind of dodges and, typical kind of Apple fashion, like,
we don't discuss future products.
Well, don't count on it, but, you never know kind of thing. So it's a pretty cool interview, though. Worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, sounds fun.
And then another video that was pretty cool is YouTuber gives a rare look inside Apple's $5 billion Apple Park headquarters. Now, this is different. He gets access to places that most people aren't getting access to somehow, and he's able to film it somehow.
Oh, wow.
And it's filmed in like a wide angle camera type thing, and it has music behind it. It's really cool. Actually, it's really cool to see. And it, like I said, you'll see a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to see if you were visiting that visitor center there. So
that's cool. Yeah, you get a little backstage or backside access. That's really nice.
Yeah,
really cool.
He goes into the donut, deep inside.
He infiltrates the mothership.
Yeah. And that's it. Just those two videos for this episode. Why don't we move on to our favorites or picks? I will start with mine. So, because we have Thanksgiving coming up here in the United States, you'll probably want to take photos of that pumpkin pie or, some of your other food, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
giant turkey.
You'll want to show it off, but you don't want it to look disgusting, do you? I mean, come on.
It is a fine line.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you ever heard of this app, because for a while you were posting photos on Facebook of your wife's amazing cooking. And I thought I was looking at like the Food Network feed or something. I mean, it was and I don't know if you were using any special camera, but I found this one called Foodie, a camera for life. I don't know where that name comes from. I don't know where the camera for life comes.
Because foodie is life.
Yeah, because you have to eat to live. I don't know. Anyways, it's free and no in-app purchases.
That's good.
What's kind of neat about it is it has like filter type suggestions. So in other words, it shows these little symbols like a coffee cup, an egg, ice cream, an orange. So it's telling you like breakfast, coffee, drinks, ice creams, fruits, that these series of filters would apply to those type of foods, which kind of gets you in the ballpark, which is handy because obviously there's just tons of filter apps out there. And of course, Instagram has built-in filters. But if you've ever used some of them, boy, it'll make your food look pretty disgusting. And
yes.
If you have, like I have Visco, like that app, and I've bought a lot of their filters. I may have like 30, 40 filters, but trying to go through all of them to see what looks good with food can be like an hour process, So this kind of is aimed at food, right? Obviously. So it gets you more in the ballpark. It also supports the wide angle on iPhone Pro. So if you want a big wide angle of that pumpkin pie, there you go. And it has, just image adjustments built in, such as brightness, contrast, saturation, color, etc. Just quick little tweaks if you want to do it on the spot instead of jumping out of the app and having to do it. And then, of course, it has sharing with most of the, major social networks. And, not too much else to say on it. I've tried it. It works pretty good. Obviously, you can adjust each filter too. Instead of just having it cranked up to 100%, you can bring it down to 50, see what looks right for your food. But
that's really cool.
Yeah,
and
we
normally just use Instagram. But it's like you said, I'll go through all of the different filters.
Yeah,
and you have to check each one and be like, well, did I like that one or that one? And typically, I end up just going back to no filter and then just adjusting some of the balance and stuff like that. So if I were able to get recommendations based off of foods, that's kind of a really cool little concept.
I would try it. You should get it as well and try it, if you take any photos of food soon. I like the little kind of hints and suggestions it gives you as to what type of food. Because the thing is, when you're using those filters on Instagram, if you're taking a photo of meatloaf, you don't want to have the greens cranked up. Gross.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, if you have ever seen, you're a little young, but if you've seen like any cookbooks from the 70s or like early 70s, mid 70s, it is truly
crazy
appalling.
Jello stuff.
Yeah, it's appalling. It's like, did people really look at these books and go, wow, that looks good?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really pretty vile looking.
If that was what was considered appetizing and exciting, what were they eating otherwise?
Spam.
Yeah. Bugs?
Yeah.
Sawdust? I don't know.
Just spam. But there was probably spam cookbooks as well.
Yeah.
But, and a lot of the filters in this app are kind of soft, which look really neat. They show some examples in the App Store. It's cool little app, and
I'll have to check it out. We'll definitely be posting pictures from Thanksgiving. I used to post tons of photos of my wife's cooking, and I actually do still. It's just that now instead of posting them directly to like my feed, I do them on or to my timeline. I just do it as like the stories, and so they go away. And part of that is because
I was complaining. I actually had to complain to Facebook. I'm like, this guy is harassing me with his food. Like,
I kept getting flagged.
Yeah, it's making me so
inappropriately
hungry.
Delicious.
Yeah, it's making me so hungry, and he won't give me any of this food, and they don't deliver, and like I go, man, I can't take it anymore.
So now most of it ends up on in the stories. But the thing I do have in my current feed is I'm on a mission, and my mission is to find the best, in my opinion, the best slice of pepperoni pizza. And not the best slice of pizza, not the best, just has to be pepperoni. And so now I'm going around, and when I can, I will order the pepperoni pizza, just baseline. And I'm taking a picture of that and writing a small review on it.
John,
and I'm searching for like the best pepperoni pizza.
Well, hopefully you should actually set a time limit on that, because I don't want to be doing this 10 years from now. And like John's, you're 400 pounds Like,
yeah,
I think I've finally found the best pepperoni pizza, and I'm eating the whole pizza.
Yeah.
John,
but now I have to go back and retry them all again just to confirm.
Yeah, and you're 400 pounds. Like,
yes. No, it's not every single time. Just because it's on the menu doesn't mean I get it. But when I get pizza and I'm out, I will order a pepperoni.
And I'm only out
a consistent baseline.
I'm only out 3 times a day.
Yeah,
and, so I have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it's fine. I don't have a bad habit going on here.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I don't have an issue.
Oh, I think the pizza man's here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Just leave it outside.
It's actually 2 pizza deliveries because you want to compare.
Yeah. I got Domino's and Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
And Papa John's is an hour later.
Oh, I see. You're trying the best first.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Anyways, what is your pick?
So my app was actually pointed out to me by my brother. So shout out to my brother Lee. This is called Marco Polo. And actually, I think there's probably a lot of people who have it. This is an app that's been out there in the world, but I just had never really used it until recently. But for those of you who don't know, Marco Polo is essentially the love child between FaceTime and messages, where basically you are able to take a snippet video of yourself and send that to a recipient. And so it's like FaceTime messages. You just, instead of typing out what you're saying or what you want to say, you just say it to the camera and you shoot it over to them, and then they do the same thing. And so you don't have to be, it's not like a FaceTime where you have to be both on at the same time. You can just record it and send it off, and then they can listen to it at their convenience and continue the conversation back and forth. It's really fun. It lets you, it's a little easier, I think, than typing, though you do have to get over the whole idea of like just talking out in the distance. So, or recording yourself. But at first it felt a little weird, but now I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with it. And yeah, I think it's lots of fun. So give it a look. There's also like doodles and filters you can apply, little AR things on it, just like in FaceTime. And you can also do groups. So you can have multiple people on the same chain, and you're sending out that message. So just like a text message or with the Messages app.
Okay.
But yeah, Marco Polo, check it out.
Cool. Yeah, and I was just looking it up. It looks like it's available for the iPhone and iPad.
Yes.
And the app that I mentioned, Foodie Camera for Life, is only for the iPhone.
Okay.
So no food photos with your iPad.
The camera's probably better on your phone anyways.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if Apple ends up stealing Marco Polo, because it seems like an easy feature to be added into the Messages app.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you have the keyboard, or you can have the voice record. And it's kind of like, Snapchat, where it's just a quick thing, you send it off.
Yeah. Yeah, and they already do. Yeah, Apple already has the voice, where you can just send a voice, which I don't think, I don't know anyone that even uses it, but the video might be a little more compelling to use.
We've used it a couple times too. It's easier to like turn the camera around and show a thing that you're talking about as well. Which is why I think people are using it more than the voice memo back and forth. The only time I actually ever really use the voice part for messages is actually just to dictate a text message. But I also don't know how much of that is just normal conditioning of like I'm used to sending text as opposed to an audio file. But I will say this, the discrete nature of a text, like being able to access it, send it, and receive it anywhere, even in areas where it's quiet, is very convenient. And so with the whole thing with Marco Polo or voice notes in that way, you do need to be in a place you can hear it. And it's appropriate for you to record as well. So it's not for every message you're going to send, but it's fun, especially if you have family that's out there. So you got people that you can't meet with on Thanksgiving, maybe have everybody download Marco Polo app and see if you guys can connect and show off your turkeys.
Yeah. Well, for anyone that's listening and who is here in the United States, have a good Thanksgiving. And to you, John, have a good Thanksgiving. Anyone that's not thanks. And anyone not in the United States, just have a great 2 weeks till we do another episode. Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode of the Apple Watchers. Read all the stories we've covered and more stories on Flipboard, a link provided in the show notes. Reach out to us on Twitter @WatchersTweet if you have any suggestions or stories you'd like us to cover. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Ask your smart speaker to play the Apple Watchers podcast. Please subscribe and rate us wherever you listen. And thank you for listening. Until the next episode, I hope the only complications in your life are the ones on the face of your Apple Watch.